Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners. This is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the Smart Room page. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Select member Philippe Ingels from Wakster. Before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Philip, and he will do his best to answer them all at the end of the session. Okay, thank you, Philip. Over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Just as a short introduction, I've been creating visual-driven content for marketing purposes and for games for the last 30 years. And I have a particular fondness for characters, as you will see in this presentation today. And that is because characters have certain abilities that is quite unique to characters and can open doors in terms of marketing reach that some other methods are more difficult in achieving. So we're going to start our presentation today the theme, why smart brands use characters. There's a lot on the web that you can find about the power of characters and their abilities and the things that they can do in a marketing context. But the one that we're going to cover today is one that's not often referred to in blogs about characters, and yet I think it's one of the most powerful elements in a character's repertoire of powers that can open doors in terms of marketing reach. We're going to start our story 10,000 years ago, and in that time life was fairly simple, a lot simpler than it was today. You had to do two important things to survive. The one is that you had to find food, and the second one is that you had to try not to become somebody else's food. Finding a mate was also important, but we're not going to cover that in today's presentation. So in that context of survival, other people were very important, and that was for three key reasons. The first one is they were able to see things that you missed. The second one is they gave you useful stuff. And the third one is they offered you great services, like getting eaten instead of you. The problem, though, was that not everyone offered the same quality of product or services. And we see a lot of that today as well, I think. And some people gave awful services, like not getting eaten in your place. So figuring out who you could trust and work with was a very big problem. And after much deliberation, we figured out a really cool formula that involved analyzing things such as body language, tone of voice, personality, the type of emotional connection, whether the person used humor, but that formula turned out to be very, very complicated. I mean, it was processed by the unconscious mind that's able to process, millions of bits of data per second, but in terms of our consciousness, it was too complicated to comprehend. Now, after some time, we found a really good solution to this problem. And what the mind did was basically notify your consciousness with a single emotion called feel good. It basically notified you that, after doing all this calculation about whether this person is trustworthy or not, if you had a good feeling about a person, you could generally be assured that you could trust them. Now today, you have loads of people who want you to have their products or services through emails, ads, social media posts, direct messages, blogs, newsletters. And with all that noise, it has become really difficult again for us to figure out who we could trust. There's so much of all these messages that we are receiving, and a lot of them seem to be stripped of their human connection. A lot of them is all about the product, or about the service that's offered, and there's not much about the relationship building part. So the question now with today's marketing content is, where's the feel good in all this blah, blah, blah that we're receiving? And that is why smart brands use characters, because the characters becomes almost like a stand-in for all that feel-good factor. So the character promises you a feel-good experience that gets the brand through the door. And that's because characters are synonymous with entertainment. We know that through our experience since we were little kids, that characters are captivating, they're refreshing, they resonate with us. Some of them have got great personalities, they share fun stories with us, they make a real emotional connection, or they are able to anyway. They're usually very engaging in the stories they tell. They can be very different from each other, and they're definitely very memorable. So entertainment, to our minds, has an automatic connection with being relaxed, and and sets us in a relaxed and much more pleasant mood. And when you relax, you tend to be more inclined to pay attention to what somebody is telling you. So you can see with all these elements why these brands are using characters. As just to capture again, they immediately when you see them represent entertainment, which then puts an expectation on you that kind of relax you, and it's going to be fun and captivating, and then you pay a lot more attention to that content. So the big question is, if you see somebody using characters and all that, does the character necessarily imply that the product is good? Well, the answer is obviously not, but it says a lot about the people that's behind the product or service. So it says that they really care about how you feel, and they're going to make sure that they look after you. And if they care about you and how you feel, they're going to make sure they look after you. They're going to make sure that that feel good, that care that you've experienced through the presentation the characters have done, translate back into what the company actually does in terms of their products and services. So here are some examples of projects that use characters that I've been involved in. The first one is for Celcom. Celcom is a Tanzanian-owned private company playing a very pioneering role in that country in terms of in the finance technology sector. So what we use the characters for is to basically tell the audience about the Celcom card and how easy it's to use and how empowering it is, and all the places that you could use the card. Now, the alternative was to get actors, to find suitable locations, to get a video production crew on board, but that would have been way too expensive in terms of the budget that the client had for this project. So the characters became a very good way of telling the story at a reasonable cost. These are characters that we developed for Owen Estate Planning Services. John Owens is a Worcestershire-based estate planning consultant, and we used the characters in 3 videos that helped explain in very simple terms what probate is, how trust works, and what powers of attorneys are, and how that worked. This was a project that I did for Volkswagen. They wanted to highlight security considerations internally to their personnel. And we did 3 videos dealing with things like phishing, document security, and access control. Now, these characters are obviously a lot simpler than the 3D ones that you saw in this presentation. These are 2D characters, but they're also very powerful in carrying a story. And again, you can see the entertainment here because we used the zombie as a stand-in for not allowing unvetted people into the building and so on. So it became entertaining and fun to watch. And if you take the alternative, might have been a PowerPoint document with some bullet points, saying, here are the rules and this is what you need to do and this is why it's important. That is a lot more difficult to sell to people and to get them to come on board rather than using, entertaining story like we did here. This is also a 2D character. This is actually what I call 2D plus. It's a 3D character, but it's rendered as 2D, which gives us a lot more flexibility and smoothness in terms of the motion. This was done for a company called Wilmot Dixon, sorry. They are one of the UK's leading independent construction and property services companies. And with this animation, they introduced their health, well-being and performance program called Life Balance. And this project was a good example of where the client didn't want to personally appear on video. So the client looked a bit like this character, and the character was a stand-in for her, and did the whole presentation about this service that they offer. For the same client, we used these characters. They are obviously 3D, proper 3D characters. And again, we created 3 videos that were targeted at the contractors that they employ to emphasize the importance of offering good quality work and the consequences, as you can see there, of getting it wrong. And again, we could have, just had a talking head video, telling them, this is why it's important, all that, or we could have presented it in this story format, which was a lot more fun and engaging, and it had a lot of humor in it. And again, this little character on the left, this is one of the people at Wilmot Dixon. So there was a lot of buy-in and fun throughout this project. And again, let's get people on board with the message and make them, get them to remember what it's about and why it's important. And as part of the project, we also produced a lot of posters and even a complete wall art on their training center wall to connect all these messages together. I've included this character, which is a more sophisticated character. It's got hair and all the hair simulated. This character was created for this project called Roof Rack Roars, and that was a Botswana-based company who wants to use these characters to draw attention to conservation efforts in Botswana and raise funding for projects. So yeah, the warthog was a lot of fun to create. So there you have it. Just to summarize, the power of characters really, and in terms of a marketing context again, is the fact that in all this noise that we have in terms of content that we get bombarded with, the character really stands out among all this content because they inherently, in everything they stand for, they say, we are about entertainment and fun, and you can have a good experience. And that draws people into the content of your message. And once you're in the content, they're able, through storytelling, to keep you on board and take you through the whole message, so that you know, end up understanding what it is, exactly what differentiates this company, and why you should support their products and services rather than their competitions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. We have a number of questions for you. The first one's come through from Amanda, and she asks, do you have characters that already exist? And when do you think I should consider getting my own bespoke characters designed?
Yes, one of the things I realized fairly early in setting up Wakster is that characters can be fairly expensive to develop. The actual character design. The 3D characters, once they're developed, becomes very cost effective to produce animation and renderings like this presentation I've just done. But they can be, you know, to design a bespoke character can be expensive. So what I did with Wakster is to start developing a whole library of characters that are available for use. The characters that you saw that we used in William Dixon and Salcom, for instance, they are library characters that are available. It's almost like actors, you know, they act in different movies and projects. So the thing about when you should consider a bespoke character is if you've got a product or service that you want to explain in a fun and engaging way, then using, you know, one of the library characters or existing characters is definitely, you know, powerful and effective enough. As you saw with Salcom, you know, they're a big company, they're a very strong brand, and yet you know, we just needed to tell a story about this brand, you know, about this car. So they were fine with using a existing library character. Where bespoke character comes in is if you want to make sure that people immediately recognize your brand when they see the character. So the character and your brand becomes completely synonymous with each other. Then a bespoke character is something that you should consider. Having said that, I've done projects with my library characters where the client uses it completely as a branded character, but that's just because, you know, the market they operated in was very local. The characters are not like super famous, you know, like the meerkats from Compare the Market. So the chances that the character, you know, that the prospective client of theirs see the character in one setting and another setting was, you know, fairly small, and the cost saving was enough for them to, you know, to say, no, that's all right, we'll just use a library character and we will build our brand around that.
Okay, thank you. Your next question is from Karen. Are characters the only options I have if I want to get this level of engagement with my marketing content?
That's a good question. The answer is no. I think the big consideration is that these days, if you want to get the most out of your marketing, it's a good idea to develop a character or personality that spread your message. Now that, you know, it can be a character or personality in terms of a you know, a human, a person with a strong personality that can stand in as the person, you know, telling the story or representing the brand. Successful marketing creates stories in which the concepts are really simple and easy to understand, and those stories are very informative. But for the story to resonate, to pay off in the video or in the posters or ads that you create, it needs to make an emotional connection to be really effective. And this is where a strong character or strong personality in terms of a person plays a key part. You know, there's, again, that formula that I spoke about in the presentation. Your mind, you know, filters through all those, analyze all those things like body language and tone of voice and humor and story to create this feel-good factor. And you really need a human or a character that has personality to be able to carry that message through. So yes, characters are really good to do this, but humans are equally effective.
Okay. I think those are all the questions you have for you today. Thank you again, Philippe, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and Philippe's contact details out to you all very shortly. So if you do have any further questions, then please do email Philippe direct. But before we close, just a quick reminder, this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please do visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. That's the end of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you can join us again very soon.
Thank you, everyone.